全てを取り戻死ねえぞこんな意味。
Sheesh, man, we did it. We made it through another one, Tekken 4, and I feel like I'm feeling about the same about T4. There's something about this game that is much more appealing than I think it was before, because ultimately we have to recognize the place that Tekken 4 is in. By many accounts, this is, you know, for a lot of people, the worst Tekken. I don't think this is as bad as maybe even Tekken 1 or 2, which are pretty ancient. The redeemable elements, I think, shine way more nowadays. So let's just talk about the Tekken 4 kind of controversy which existed back in its release. The stuff that sort of set it up to be one of the most unsuccessful Tekken games, weirdly enough, and also almost sunk the franchise. It almost made like Harada leave the company because of the much different approach, the grounded realism, much different like take on Tekken between gameplay and story and everything. What was one of the big things that was rough about this game? To me, in my eyes, one of the roughest parts was actually Jin Kazama. And mind you, Jin is one of the most busted characters in this game. He's really good, right? But they do an overhaul. The crazy thing about Tekken 4 is that it approaches story as a number one. You know, story number one has a huge impact on some of the elements in this game. Number one thing is that after, you know, Jin goes through a huge character difference, he drops his entire fight style to disassociate himself with the Mishimas. So Jin has a completely different like karate fight style that is, you know, different than the traditional kind of Kazuya stuff mix of Jun that he had in Tekken 3 and Tekken Tag. So Jin really doesn't feel much like Jin anymore. He's ridiculously good. He's OP as shit, but for many people back then, Jin was like one of the, and myself included, one of the coolest characters ever in Tekken 3 and Tekken Tag. One of the coolest characters ever. And they sort of like abandoned that completely for something that, you know, tries to approach something new again. There's other things in the roster that immediately kind of set some people off, and it's that, you know, Eddie is inherently gone. He's unlockable by a costume later, but he's replaced by Christy, and there's just a few things that are a bit different. While, you know, for the first time ever, we actually have Kazuya, Heihachi, and Jin in the same game. So, okay. All right, there's some stuff here that's kind of different and interesting and funny compared to some previous ones. So what is the big differences? Why is this one so different than other Tekkens? So number one, they try to slow things down. They try to make the game a bit slower than previous games, and they go for a more rooted element in reality when it comes to story and characters. So a lot of the Mishima style sort of crazy movement, a lot of like Korean backdashing elements that were present in previous Tekkens are actually gone, taken out of the game. The movement in this game is pretty rough. Side walking is now a thing. Oh my god, how do you even duck? Holy shit, down back. Wow, to duck you have to press down back because of the sidewalk. I feel so weird. Which is funny because at the time, Tekken had already sort of established itself as being this thing, sort of unique to other games like even Virtua Fighter. So what's funny now is I felt like Tekken eclipsed Virtua Fighter before, but weirdly enough, this game, I don't know why, is somehow chasing a Virtua Fighter element again. Granted, it's still a lot different. There's thematically and atmosphere-wise, it's very far from Virtua Fighter 3. But Tekken 4 came out at a time where the last VF game came out in 1996, like weirdly enough. And what was the whole gimmick of Virtua Fighter 3? Uneven levels, reverse kinematics on the characters so that, you know, they can actually step and move up these things, and the fact that, yeah, that will have a direct impact on gameplay and sort of like level hazards in some way. So weirdly enough, many years later, Tekken 4 in 2001, 2002 does the same thing, where they're like, okay, so we want to do level hazards similar to Virtua Fighter. We want to do uneven levels and they do much more. Granted, this game has so much more in its an environment and atmosphere. So the terrain is super varied. You can like go through, you can get smashed into certain elements. They actually add a wall this time, much different than, you know, VF. The differences before, Tekken did not have ring outs. It didn't have any sort of collision on the side. You couldn't get, you know, wrung out like Virtua Fighter. So infinite stages were all over the place. That's pretty much what Tekken was. So now it was the opposite. Now we're gonna do a different thing. Now there's actually walls. Now there's actually like collision. You can get bounced off the walls and tech off walls and all this stuff. Well, actually kind of impressive at the time. It's mixed from the fact that, okay, the walls are cool, but they are, you know, very separated. Like some of these stages are massive, like the mall and stuff like that. The parking garage, they're huge, dude. Well, some stages are very cramped, and they're not traditionally like squares or rectangles or like even anything normal. Dude, they're just all over the place. There's guardrails and stuff like that that you can't get around in certain areas. Meaning that, from what I understand, the majority of stages in this game were banned competitively because of it. Like the arena, which was an octagon, I'm pretty sure, is kind of just how the game is played, you know, straight up. That's just what everybody uses because the other stages are just broken. Oh my god. Was this an infinite? That was weird. My foot went through his foot. You see that? Weird stage stuff. But it's an interesting take because you look at this stuff and visually Tekken 4 is just insane looking. It also helps that the PS2 version of this game does come with a progressive scan option. So the game's actually running at 480p and that upscales super well. So what you guys are seeing on screen and from the gameplay was just, god damn, this game is beautiful, dude. So you have to give it to the visual aesthetic of it all. It's quite nice. Like, it looks really good. And to be frank, like a lot of the character redesigns, I'm kind of down for as well. I really dug, I called it Tekken 4 Jin's Bally Total Fitness outfit because he looks like he just came out of the gym, right? But I really dug that costume. I thought it was good looking. And I think some of the redesigns and other characters are okay as well. So I dug that about it. Again, also like just visually and atmosphere wise, the stages are just really pretty. Like I really dig the way that airport looks, especially. And, you know, talking about like final bosses, I think approaching at the end of an arcade mode, Fundoshi Heihachi is actually one of my favorite like final bosses ever. This dude just walks out in a diaper and is gonna beat your ass. I think it's hilarious, man. There's some redeemable parts in here for sure. What has happened over the years is that Tekken 4, when it came out, was kind of traditionally not accepted by the hardcore Tekken community because the gameplay differences were massive. If we're just gonna talk about overall, you know, impressions of what the game was, new characters were really good. Steve was really good in this game, and Jin was obviously super busted, but the game was so dominated by like poking, by like just jabs and stuff like that because of just the way frame data works and how characters function. You couldn't get away from each other, that it was kind of boring, and it was kind of like so dominated by that most people went back to Tekken Tag. I just remember everyone just saying nothing but bad things about the way Tekken 4 plays, and oh, Jin isn't my character, so I'm gonna go back to the old ones. And yeah, I kind of remember being way more excited for other games because, but at the time, like Soul Calibur, just because Tekken 4 just wasn't really hitting. On top of that, yeah, the combos were much shorter. They added much more gravity to the combos in comparison to previous ones. Things just did way less damage as well, unless you were some of the busted characters and you had some crazy wall thing. Oh my god, no damage, boys. Holy crap. I was blown away by how little damage that throw did. It was very tiny. What's weird is that time has passed now, right? And this game got a really bad rep when it came out. And it didn't review as good as the other Tekken games and goes on to be one of the worst selling Tekken games of the franchise. Almost sinks the company. But you have to give it credit. It set up the eventual home run that is Tekken 5 because it was so different. So it's got this gritty, rooted realism about it. And one thing I got to give Tekken 4 a lot of credit is atmosphere and story. I feel like Tekken's story is sort of nonsensical and weird and crazy and doesn't make any sense until what they set up in this game. They actually give characters like rooted, realistic elements. Like not just like wild thing happens, I am going on a date with a panda and we're at a fictional theme park, or some nutty thing like I'm battling a tank for whatever reason. Like no, they're like, all right, so this guy got drunk and abused his power. This character went on a rage binge and killed somebody and went to jail. This guy got betrayed by his grandfather and adopted a new fighting style to reject the lineage. Everything in Tekken 4 has this weird, dark, seedy underbelly, and it's cool. It's actually really cool. It's so different than what Tekken was before, with all these like relatively goofy endings that kind of have story. The tone of the game is kind of depressing and dark and very atmospheric. And as you realize that when you're watching these wonderful like prologues for the characters, they're actually great. You see that there's a story that's set up that's actually kind of interesting, but it goes away for the most part in the endings. So this game gets character endings across the board. Everybody gets a big ass CG ending, right? And they're long too. Most story characters have had in Tekken so far. Weirdly enough, the CG endings and the epilogues are almost completely different than what the prologues are, with the very like dark, seedy underbelly, you know, dankness, guitar riff, all that shit. It's not that. They're almost like a level of like weird goofiness that the previous endings had. It's like they're directed by completely different people. Mommy? Oh shit, good shot, mommy. I'm coming, mommy. Wait for me. Mama, wait for me, mama. I'm coming. There you are, mama. Mama, why? Mommy, why are you younger than me? What's going on?
Freeze!
Freeze! Freeze! What is happening? What the fuck is happening? As soon as characters start opening their mouths and stuff, it's like, whoa, okay. Ugh. Yeah, they do take the characters seriously in this game, but not a lot of them get like a really great payout in the end, because once again, it feels like the direction of Tekken 4 as a whole doesn't match weird CG endings. So some of them are good, some of them are actually match up. We saw King's ending was easily one of the best ones, but there's a clash there that's a little off. So I think there's easily some redeemable aspects to Tekken 4, but historically, if we're going to talk about the things that people most talk about, it's gameplay stuff, and it's a definite miss. That this game will be remembered now by hardcore folks that got introduced to Tekken in Tekken 4 to ultimately get Tekken 5, which was just Tekken 4 but good. You know, we're going to get the game actually like functions in this like way where it evolves from this point forward into something that's actually good. In a way, Tekken 4 sort of reminds me of like Street Fighter 5 comparatively, where there's things in here that are okay. Like, to a certain degree, there's things in here that are okay. It's not the same atmospherically, but it's the upgrade. It's the fact that we're going to take the things that sort of work from this game and then actually make them function and fun in Tekken 5. Tekken 5 was like an apology. It was a dedication that, okay, we misstepped. We're gonna work this out. So that's where I think credit needs to be given to Tekken 4. It did do things completely different for the Tekken franchise than any other game in the series did. It feels different, and it has an atmosphere, and the music, man, just there is some bangers in here, and I don't know if I gel with the music in this game as much as others, as we're talking about in the music section now. Authentic Sky and, you know, Airport, and some of these stages have amazing tracks. They're so atmospheric. They just don't feel like fighting game music in a way that really like complements the fight itself. They feel like the characters are just existing in these environments, and that's the music that would accompany it, instead of like getting you hyped up for some of those fights. It's very different, and I feel ultimately, because we just came off of Tekken Tag, that I like Tekken Tags obviously a little bit more, but it's different. They're setting you up for this weird sort of like, you know, very rooted and dark and edgy feel. So I think it has its place, right? I think it has its place because this is easily the most different and ultimately unique Tekken will ever be from this point forward. They will never go back to this. I tell you what, man. And they will only get more ridiculous and more crazy and, you know, more insane music and more over the top from this point forward. This is the lowest Tekken gets, and that low is not represented by sales and popularity. That low is represented by, we're gonna bring things down a bit and we're just gonna chill here, right? We're just gonna chill in this world with these characters. I'm now holding the cards and I'm gonna take everything back, you deluded fool. Tekken 4. So anyway, I'm excited for 5 because 5 takes essentially the bones of Tekken 4 and the redesign a lot of these characters and reanimations and all this stuff because this game was expensive. They redid a lot of things in this game, but it implements it in a way that is much more fun and much more of a direction of, we wanted the sequel to Tekken 3. Where was the sequel to Tekken 3? The actual sequel. Tekken Tag was not a sequel, man. Where's our Tekken 3 sequel? That ain't Tekken 4. That's actually Tekken 5.